Good day, guys. Today we're going to be looking at how to make certain settings for an architecture template and how to actually be saving those settings for future use. And so I'm opening up a new drawing to demonstrate those basic settings. And so whenever we open AutoCAD, what we need to ensure is that our units are the units that you are currently using is actually the units you want to be using. And so in my command line, I'm going to type units, or drawing setup pops up indicating that my drawing units are set at millimeters. If that's not the unit you intend to be drawing in, then you would just, from the pull down, you would select that particular unit. Since my units are going to be in millimeters, I'm going to just keep that as my drawing units. In terms of the length type, we're going to keep that as a decimal. Even though for architecture, drawing in millimeters, which is a quite small, a relatively small unit of measurement, there will be no need to indicate any decimal place, so we go for just 0. As it relates to our area, the type, we would want that to be displayed as square meters. For our precision, we could accept that for 2 decimal places. If 1 decimal place is fine for you, then you would go and check that. I'm going for 2 decimal places. In terms of your suffix, how would you want your area to be displayed? If your areas are to be displayed, you would perhaps want it displayed as SQM, perhaps, or if M2 is fine, then you would accept that. In terms of our angular measurements, the decimal degrees would be fine. The precision, you perhaps want 2 decimal places in terms of your level of accuracy. In terms of your angular measurement, you would want that to be done in an anti-clockwise, because that's the direction that AutoCAD is default to, and so we accept that as anti-clockwise rotation. With those settings, we apply and we give a OK. Alright. On your screen, you would notice that the grids are displayed, and I'm not particularly fond of using the grids, and so I'm going to be turning that off, as well as my grid snap off. I'm also going to be turning my annotation, show annotation objects. I'm going to be turning that off. Alright. Now, since whenever we produce objects in AutoCAD, they are usually produced at full size. They're just printed or plotted to scale. And so, since in any architecture set of drawings, there will be drawings to be printed or plotted at varying scales. And of such, we would therefore be required to set up a dimension style and a text style to be used in each scale that drawings are expected to be plotted at. And so to begin, I'm going to, from my layers manager, I'm going to be creating a new layer. And so let me go ahead and open up my layers manager. Alright, here's my layers manager. I'm going to go and select for a new option. This here would have given me a new layer on which to put my text and dimension styles. So I'm going to be selecting for a new, and let me first of all create the text layer. So I'm creating a text layer by name. I'm going to give that a color. Let me go with blue. Alright, give it OK, and I now have a layer for text which is blue. My line type is continuous, and I'm going to also keep my line weight as continuous. I'm going to need another layer, so let me go for new again. So I'm going to go for a new layer, and I'm going to give that name dimension. So whatever dimensions are to be used throughout the drawings will be done on this layer. Let me give that a color and contrast. Let me choose this one, give it OK. Your line type, you'd want that to be continuous. Alright, you wouldn't want your dimension lines to be in hidden detail or to be displayed as a center line, and so a continuous line is required. For your line weight, let's not apply any heaviness, any weight, so let's keep it as default. Alright, now I'm going to be selecting my text as my current layer, set that to current, and I'm going to close my layers manager. You would have noticed that your text layer is now the current layer, so whatever is being done now would have been done on your text layer. Alright, now I'm going to do annotate, and from my text area here I'm going to my annotative pull down, alright, to create my text styles, and from that I'm going to be managing my text styles. Alright, when my text style dialog box appears, now let's think about the text styles that we'll be creating. Now drawings are going to be plotted at perhaps a 1 in 10 scale, so we'll need a text style for that. A 1 in 20, 1 in 25 perhaps, a 1 in 50 for basically your floor plans and electrical plans, those sort of things, and definitely a 1 in 100 for your site plans. And so we go, first thing we're going to do is to ensure that our annotative from our size is turned off, and let's go ahead and create a new text style. AutoCAD prompts you that the current text style will be modified. Do you want to save changes? Let's go ahead and say yes, and I'm going to call this one Mark Text 10. So whenever I see that, I will be reminded that those are the texts to be used on my 1 in 10 drawings. Drawings that are to be printed at a 1 in 10 scale, I will be reminded that those will be annotated using the mark text. So I give a OK. Now I'm going to be giving some basic settings to that. So I'm going to be changing the font name. I'm going to go with Arial. Arial is a nice regular font, so I'm going to go with Arial. Since this drawings that this will be annotated on are going to be plotted at a scale of 1 in 10. Now we would want, for when our texts are printed, they're printed anywhere from a height between 2.5 to perhaps 3 millimeters, and I'm going to go with 2.5 millimeters for a printed text. But the thing is, when those texts are printed, they will be a 1 in 10 scale would have been applied, and so we would have to be multiplying the height that we would want it displayed at by the scale to give us the actual height of those texts. And so in this case it would have been 2.5 millimeters times the scale of 10, which would have given us a 25 millimeter height. I'm going to set my width factor to 0.75. It's currently at 1, so I'm going for a little bit more dense. So I'm going for 0.75. You wouldn't want your text being displayed upside down or backwards, so you ensure that those effects are actually off. Alright, and with that we give an apply. Those effects would have been applied to your 1 in 10 text that you would have just created. As mentioned, there are need for other text styles, and so for a new one we go new, and I'm now going to be creating my text to be used on my 1 in 20. So I'm going to give that a mark text, and I'm going to call it text 20. So those text styles will be used on my 1 in 20 drawings. I give a OK and give changes to that. We would basically want, though, for all your text styles to bear the same font. You wouldn't want varying fonts throughout the same drawing. Gives it a mixed effect. However, since our text height is going to be 2.5 millimeters, plotted at a scale of 1 in 20, 2.5 times 20 would give us a height of 50 millimeters. Alright, for our width factor, 0.75, and we give apply, and your text 1 in 20 would have been created. Again, we continue creating all the text styles throughout that, using that manner. Alright, so again, I'm going to give a new mark text, and this time it's the 25. Okay, Arial, regular, annotative off. The height 2.5 times the scale of 25 gives us 62.5. So let's round that to say 63 millimeters with a width factor 0.75, no effects, and give apply. Text 25 has been created. Give a new, I'm going to be creating my mark text 50 and give a OK. Alright, it's 2.5 times the scale of 50, that's 125 millimeters high, oblique width factor 0.75, and keep the oblique angle 0, which means your text would have been kept perfectly vertical, and apply. Alright, for a new, again, this would have been mark text 100, give OK. 2.5 times the scale of 100 would give us 250. Oblique angle 0.75, apply, and our text styles would have been created. Alright, since this is a template and we have no intention of using either of these text styles just yet, then there would be no need to set any of them current. Alright, so we could just close that dialog box. Since 1 in 100 text, however, was the last one to have been created, it would have been displayed as your current text in your text style. But if you were to enter the pull down, you would now realize that the text styles created would now be here and are now ready for use. Alright, now I'm going to be showing you how to create your dimension styles for use as well. To do that, we ensure that we are on that layer. So from your home tab, we select our dimensions layer and make that the current layer. Alright, then you want to go back to your annotate, and from your dimension styles you want to pull down and you want to go manage it. Alright, from here we want to start creating some new ones. From your dimension style manager, you want some new dimension styles, and so we go new, and you want to ensure that your annotatives are usually off. So if you see an annotative box and that's checked, then it would be best we turn those off. So let's turn that off, and we would want to be starting our dimension with perhaps a mark. I'm just referring to them by name, so I'm going to be calling this mark dim 10. So this indicates that this dimension style will be used on my 1 in 10 drawings. I give a continue. Now this is where we go about creating those dimension styles. So I'm going to be creating my mark 10 or my 1 in 10 dimension styles, and I'm usually in preference of starting at the front. So let me go ahead for here. Now I'm going to be setting, first of all, my dimension lines, and the first thing AutoCAD asks us is, in setting your dimension lines, what color would you want to be displayed? Would you want it by black, which is already white? No, we would have already set some colors. So we would go and say by layer, line type, by layer we have created, line weight, by layer, extend beyond ticks, the dimension lines. How far beyond the architecture ticks would we want these projected? Since 2 mm is a reasonable amount, then we would have gone for 2 mm times the scale at which it will be printed, which gives us 20. Alright. No need to mess with any of the other settings as it relates to your dimension lines. Let's now talk about our extension lines. The color for our extension lines, by layer. Line type for your extension line 1, by layer. Line type for extension line 2, by layer. The line weight for your extension lines, by layer. Alright. No need for them to be suppressed. Let's keep them as they are. Now, still referring to your extension lines, you would want your extension lines to protrude beyond your dimension lines. You would want for your extension lines to just stop sharp at your dimension lines. You would want them protruding a little bit. And 2 mm is usually a reasonable amount. 2 mm times the scale, however, would have given us 20 mm. And the extension line actually shouldn't touch the object, and so a gap of 2 mm is reasonable again. So 2 mm times the scale of 10 again is 20. Alright, we don't want to be giving them any fixed length extension lines. Alright, we want our extension lines. We will determine the lengths of those. We don't want those to be fixed. And so we move on to symbols and arrows. In architecture, our arrowheads should be architecture ticks. We do not really use arrowheads in terms of our dimensioning. And so first and second arrowheads should really be architecture ticks as opposed to arrows. Alright? Your leader. In the event where we have to use leader lines, then we would want our leader lines, or our arrowheads, our arrow tips, to be the filled type. Alright? Arrow size are usually the same size as the text. And since our text were 2.5 mm, then our arrowheads should be printed at approximately 2.5 mm. At a scale of 1 in 10, we have to go with 25 mm. Alright? Center marks, we're going to go for none. Alright, so the center marks would not be indicated for us. With that, we move to our next setting, or our next tab, text. Your text appearance. What text would you want appearing in your 1 in 10 dimension? Your text 1 in 10. And so we go for our text 10. What color? By layer. Fill color? None. Text height? Now that's already set. Fractional scale is already set. Would you want a text, a box drawn around the text? No, so we leave that unchecked. Vertical placement for your text. Let's have all our text placed outside. Alright. For your horizontal, we keep those centered, and our dimensions are read from a left to right. The distance from between your dimension line and your dimension, we would want that perhaps a millimeter, and since we're in a scale of 10, we're going to keep that at 10. Alright, and you always want to align your dimension with dimension line. Alright, so we go fit. What we're going to check in here is to ensure that your dimension will be always kept between extension lines. Alright, you want to ensure that your dimensions are always kept between the extension lines. And so that box is already checked. Notice, however, that the dimensions are not displayed. And so we have to scale those to the layout. Now they're displayed. Alright. So with those settings made, we move to our primary units. And already discussed that our primary units would have been decimal. Our precision should have been 0. And so we realize that really there are no settings to be made usually in our primary units, because we had already set our units as we would have wanted them to be. Alternate units, however, were not set, and so let's go and set those. You would want to display your alternate units, so you check that box. And your primary units is already set at decimal. You would want your alternate units also at decimal. And so we're going to go with the architecture mode of dimensioning. In terms of your precision, that relates to what level of accuracy would you want this drawing to have. And in my case, I'm going to go with just feet and inches in terms of my dimensions. Alright. Alright. And the multiplier units, that would have to be 0.04. Round distances to 0. Yeah, that's fine. But you would want your alternate units. You wouldn't want them displayed after each other. You would want one displayed below the other. Alright, and so that's what we would have gotten for our dim 10. Tolerance, no need to mess with that, but you have to also realize though that your alternative units would have been displayed in feet and inches. Alright, with that you give a OK, and so your 1 in 10 dimension would have now been set. I'm going to go ahead and create the others, so I go for new. Again, I'm going to call this mark dim 10, so let me remove that portion, and this is now 20. Annotative is already off, so we give continue. From lines, by layer, by layer, by layer, extend beyond ticks. We said we would have wanted for 2 millimeters, 2 times the scale, gives 40. Alright. Extend beyond dimension lines, we said 2 times the scale again, gives 40. Offset from origin, 2 times the scale, gives 40. And with that we move to our symbols and arrows. Our arrowheads would have been architecture tick. For a second, architecture ticks. And for our leader, again close filled. Arrow size 2.5. 2.5 times our scale of 20. That would have given us arrow size of 50 millimeters. Center marks, none. And we move to our next tab. Text. In terms of your text appearance, your text style, displayed for your dim 20 would have to be your text 20. So we go for our 1 in 20 text style. Alright. The text color should be by layer, and the fill color would have been none. Text placement outside, centered, left to right. But the text distance from the dimension line, we would have wanted that 1 millimeter at a scale of 20. We go for 20. Your dimension lines are already aligned with your dimensions. And so we go for fit. Always keep dimensions between the extension lines, and your drawings are already scaled to the layout. Alright, with that, primary units, decimal, all of that set. Alternate units, architecture, it will be displayed. multiplier units 0.04. So with that, we give an OK. So what you realize is, having set the earlier ones, then there would have been less settings to be made for the later ones. Alright, and so again I give a new. Now I'm going for my 1 in 25. So let me name this as such. Mark dimension 25. Continue. From my lines, extend beyond ticks. We said 2 times our scale of 25 gives us 50. Extend beyond dimension lines, 50. Offset from origin, 50. And no need to make any other change here. Symbols and arrows. Architecture tick for your first and second. Leader, close filled. Arrow size 2.5 times our scale of 25. That gives 62.5. We're going for 63 for rounding off. And with that, we move to our text setting. We're in our dimension 1 in 25. And so our text style to be appearing here would have to be our text 1 in 25. Alright, so we make that setting. Text color by layer. Fill color, none. Vertical, in terms of your text placement, should be outside. The horizontal alignment should be centered, and it will be viewed in a left to right direction. The placement from your dimension line, we said 1 millimeter would have been fine, and so 1 times 25, 25. Align dimension with dimension line. Alright, we go for fit. Always keep dimension lines between your extension lines and ensure that you scale dimensions to your layout. Your primary units would have already been set, so too would your alternate units. Alright, with that we give a OK. And we move to a new dimension style, which is now going to be my dim 50. Alright, so let me name it as such. Dim 50, which means 1 in 50. And give a continue. Alright, from lines, dimension line should extend an extra 2 millimeters. 2 times the 50 gives 100. Extend beyond dimension lines 2 times the scale of 50. Again, that's 100. Offset from origin 2 times the scale of 50, 100. And move to our symbols and arrows. Our first arrowhead should be architecture ticks. Second, architecture tick, leader, close filled. And our arrow size 2.5 millimeters times the scale of 50. That would give us 125 millimeters. Center marks none, and we move on. Alright. Text. The text to be displayed would be your text 50. So we select that. Text color by layer. Fill, none. Text height already set. In terms of your text placement, it should be vertically outside and horizontally centered. Alright. In terms of your view direction, it's left to right. Offset distance from your dimension line for your dimensions should have been 1 millimeter times the scale of 50. Your dimension should be aligned with your dimension lines. Fit. Always keep text, and we realize that there are no further settings to be made. Alright, so with that we give a OK. And I'm now going to be creating my final one, which is now going to be my dimensions for my 1 in 100. Give a continue. Alright, lines. Again, extend beyond ticks. We we said 2 times our scale gives 200. Extend beyond dimension lines 200. Offset from origin 200. And with that we move on to our symbols and arrows. Alright, first arrowhead is our architecture ticks, second as well. Our leader, close filled, our arrow size 2.5 times the scale, 250. Center marks none, we move to our text. Text to be displayed, be your text 1 in 100. Text color by layer, fill color none. And your text placement, outside, centered, left to right, but your text placement is 1 millimeter times the scale gives 100. Alright, your text is aligned with your dimension line, and your fit would have already been set. Primary units set, alternate units also set. Alright, again, there will be no need to set any of these dimension styles current, so we give a OK and we could now close. But you would now realize that you would have created your basic dimension lines from your dimension list there. Let's give a close, and you would now realize that your dimension styles would now have been created from your pull down. The dimension styles created would have been displayed and ready for use. Alright, and finally we're going to be creating our multi-leader text. These are texts that will be used whenever there are labeling to be done that requires the use of leader line. And so again, we're going to be creating one for each. Alright, so to do that, we go back to our text layer, because we would want to be creating our multi-leader styles on our text layer. So we go home, and again we revert to our text layer. Alright, it's very important that we manage our layer management carefully. Alright, so now we want to go from the home tab, we go annotative, or annotations rather, and from that pull down you want to manage your multi-leader styles. Alright, so from that pull down you go manage multi-leader. Now before managing, however, they have to be created, and so we want to create a new one, which in my case I'm going to be calling it Mark Multi 10. Alright, I'm going to ensure that my annotative is off and give a continue. Alright, there are 3 tabs to be set in this manager. Our first, which refers to our leader structure, the type, we want to keep those as straight as opposed to as spline, which would have been an alternative. So I'm going to keep my leaders straight, and my color by layer, my line types by layer, my line weight by layer. Alright, my arrowheads for my 1 in 10, we're going to keep those as a close filled, and we said 2.5 is the nice size, or a proper size, for a better word, for our arrowheads. And so 10 times the 2.5, 25. Our break size, we'll keep those at 0. Alright, and we move to our leader structure. Your constraints, let's keep that at 2. In terms of you want it to automatically include a landing. Alright, and a landing of 3 millimeters would have been reasonable. In a scale of 1 in 10, that would have been about 30 millimeters. Alright, and we move on to our content. The multi-leader type is going to be a M-text, which is multi-text, and the text style to be displayed would have to be, in this case, our M10, or your 1 in 10, whatever your name was, or the name given to it was. The text angle, you want to keep those always horizontal, unless otherwise you would want to rotate them on screen but for now we'll keep our text angle horizontal. Our text color by layer. Alright, our text height is already set, and you would want to keep your text justified to your left. In terms of your leader connection, you would always want your leader line to be connected horizontally to your text as opposed to vertically. Alright, so we're going to keep our text connected in a horizontal way. You'd want your text also to be connected by the leader line in the middle of the first line as opposed to underlining the text. And so we go for middle of top line, and for our right alignment as well, we'll go for middle of top line. In terms of the landing gap, which is the space between your leader line and your text, we would want that to perhaps be about 2 millimeters. In a scale of 1 in 10, we go in for 2 times the scale, would have been 20 millimeters. Alright, because you wouldn't want to extend the leader to your text, and so we uncheck that box, ensuring that there is a gap. Alright, and as a matter of fact, 2 seems to be a little bit too large. I'm going to go with 1 millimeter, and so we go with 10. Alright, with those settings made, we give an OK, and that style would have been created. Like text and dimension, we go for new, and I'm going to be repeating the process. So I'm going to give this a name of mtext. This time it's 20, and give a continue. Alright, from your leader format, your type straight, color by layer, line type by layer. Again, most settings would have been made, but in terms of your arrow size, 2.5 times the scale of 50 times the scale of 20 rather, that would have given us 50 millimeters. Alright, your leader structure, maximum constraints 2 points, and it will automatically include a landing. Our landing distance 3 millimeters times the scale of 20, so that's now going to be 60 millimeters. And we move on to our content. The text style to be displayed is now going to be your text 20. Text color by layer, text height already defaulted, always justified, left justified, and our horizontal attachment we're going to be middle of top line, and for the right, middle of top line again. So again, we have less settings to make as you move further and further into creating these styles. Our landing gap, however, we determined that our landing gap would have been 1 millimeter times the scale, so now it would have been 20 millimeters. Alright, we give a OK, and we move on creating the others. So we're going for new. Let me clean that up. This time it's 25. Give continue. Leader format, type straight, color by layer, line type by layer, line weight by layer, arrowhead, close filled, arrow size 2.5 times the scale, gives 62.5, say 63. Leader structure, to automatically include landing, landing size 3 millimeters times the scale, gives us 75. And we move on to our content, which is now text style 25, text angle horizontal, text color by layer, text height left justified, middle of top, and your landing gap, we said 1 millimeter times the scale would have been 25. Give it OK. New. Now going to be creating our 1 in 50. So let's go with moving a little bit fast there, because you'd have gotten the hang by now. Our leader format, straight, color by layer, line type by layer, line weight by layer, arrow size close filled, size 2.5 times the scale of 50 gives us 125. For your leader structure, 2 points, it will automatically include a landing distance of 3 millimeters times the scale of 50, 150. And we move on to our content. We are creating our text 50. Text angle is horizontal color by layer. Text height already default, always left justified, and horizontal attachment. And again, it's middle of top. Landing gap 1 millimeter space times the scale 50. Give a OK. And our final one is now going to be my, let's clean it up, and this is my multi 100. Give a continue. Leader format, straight, by layer, arrowhead close field, size 2.5 times the scale. That gives an even 250. Leader structure, 2 points. Landing gap will be automatically included. 3 millimeters times our scale gives 300. And we move to our content. Text to be displayed. Text 100. Text angle, keep it horizontal. Text color, it's by layer. Text height is default. You want your text always left justified, and your horizontal attachment, and those will be made in the middle of the top. Landing gap of 1, so it's times the scale. Let's go with 100, and we give a OK. Alright, here we have created all our text and dimension styles that will be used on our drawings. What we do now is there is no need to set any of them new, so we would give a close and we would have had our annotations basically set. What you want to do now is to save this such that whenever you reopen AutoCAD, you will now open AutoCAD from that template as opposed to having to go over the process. Alright, to do that, like we save a drawing, we go save or save as preference. So we go save as, and you determine where you would want to have this template saved, because it could also be saved as a feature of AutoCAD in the template system. I'm going to go ahead and save mine on my desktop. Alright, and I'm going to be saving this as, I'm going to be giving this a file name as let me call it Mark ACAD. Alright, I'm going to be calling it Mark ACAD. But the file type, however, now has to change, because you no longer want to save this as a drawing. You want to be saving it as a template. And so from the pull down, we're going to be saving it as a DWT format. And so here we see drawing template. We hit on that. Immediately it brings you to the template sections in AutoCAD. So here again, let me rename. Let me call it Mark ACAD. Alright, and again you could give a save. Alright, and if you perhaps want to give it a description, it's your AutoCAD. Let me just give a little description about it. This is my template saved with text styles, for example. Alright, and we give a OK, and your template has been saved. Alright, now let's go on the desktop and see if we can now find our template. Might be a little bit hard to find. My desktop is in pretty much disarray, but your template would now have been saved. Alright, So whenever time you wish to open AutoCAD, we could now do so by launching the template that you would have now created. All right. Thanks for viewing.